So good morning. So today I wanted to share as an opening to this week's Torah portion, which is Naso, is the 5 love languages in Judaism. You know that there was a well-known author, a best-selling author, Gary Chapman, who wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages, and it was a bestseller. As a matter of fact, I tell my kids when they go on a date, they should ask their date, what's your love language? So you get to know the person. So who knows the 5 love languages? Anybody want to share? So you have. Now, why am I sharing the 5 love languages? Because when God gave the Torah at Sinai, the commentaries of Hasidus, Jewish mysticism, which is Kabbalah, says there were 5 voices. 5 voices were heard. And Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism explains many interpretations, but one of them is that there's 5 love languages of God, who is the groom to the Jewish people, who is the bride. We know that the giving of the Torah was not only that God imparted the 613 mitzvos and the moral and ethical foundation of life for all humanity and forever for the Jewish people, but it also gives us an insight of our relationship. We call it the cosmic relationship. God is the groom, the Jewish people are the bride in the relationship. And we know that many customs of a Jewish wedding, comes from the giving of the Torah. For example, the marriage canopy. It says that Kafa Aleim Har Kegigit, that God lifted up Mount Sinai over the heads of the Jewish people. Similarly, we have a marriage canopy. And there's many other instances. What is the ketubah, the Torah? The Torah ties us to God and God to us. It's the marriage certificate. That's why when Moshe came down from Sinai with the 10 commandments, the tablets, and he saw they were worshiping the golden calf, he broke the tablets. Why? He couldn't hide them. He couldn't put them in a chamber and say, when you're deserving, I'll give it to you. He broke them because this was a testimony to the marriage. And if you cheat on your spouse, it's a terrible thing. But if there's no marriage contract, there's no proof there was a marriage. So he broke the 10 commandments to protect the nation and say, look, God, you didn't have a contract with them. So they worshipped idolatry. They worshipped another God. They cheated on you, so to speak. Now there's no contract. So everything about Mount Sinai, the giving the Torah, is about the relationship and the marriage between God and the Jewish nation. So the 5 voices are the 5 ways that we relate to God, the 5 love languages, and God relates to us. So what are the 5 love languages? Anybody know? Anybody read this book? Okay, I'll share. One is words of affirmation. Some people's love language is compliments, praise. Say, honey, you look so handsome today. I really appreciated that you dropped off my dress at the cleaners. Whatever, words of affirmation. Very, very important. A relationship is to express your love. Like in Fiddler on the Roof, she asks him, do you love me? He asks her, Golda, do you love me? She says, for 25 years, I've washed your clothes, I've darned your socks, I've cooked your meals. I guess that's called love. Because many times we don't express love. We don't say, I love you. We do act, but we may not say it. So it's very important, words of affirmation. The second love language is spending quality time. Some people that just don't have time for each other. So spending time together, whether you're taking a walk, sitting together to eat dinner, just schmoozing, watching a TV show together, spending quality time together, munching on a bucket of popcorn or whatever. And the third thing is giving gifts. Some people's love languages, giving a gift. A gift goes a long way, especially if it's jewelry. The story. It's a couple's anniversary, and she's waiting for breakfast. She's sure there's going to be a wrapped gift on the table. Nothing. Lunch. She expects the doorbell to ring any second. Nothing. Comes dinner. He comes home, no flowers, no gift. She's furious. She says, honey, if there isn't a gift in the driveway tomorrow morning that goes from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds, it's over. He's thinking, what goes from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds? So he buys her a little package and she opens it up. It's a bathroom scale. She's expecting a sports car and he bought her a little scale. Okay. And there's another story, a couple, they're not on speaking terms. They had an argument and no one wants to break the impasse. You know those stories, right? No one wants to be the first one to admit that they were wrong. So the husband and wife are not speaking to each other. They're giving each other the silent treatment. Now the husband has a big business meeting and he has to leave to the airport at 5 a.m. So what's the problem? Problem is he doesn't know how to wake up in the morning. The only way he wakes up is his wife wakes him up. So he doesn't know what to do. He can't break the impasse. So he leaves her a note. Honey, tomorrow morning, wake me up at 5 a.m. Anyway, the next morning he wakes up. It's 9 a.m. He missed his flight. He missed the important business meeting. He yells out to his wife, didn't I write to you to wake me up at 5 a.m.? Because of you, I missed my flight. She said, I did wake you up at 5 a.m. He says, where? I didn't hear you. So she points to a note on the nightstand. Honey, wake up. It's 5 a.m. She wrote him a note. He wrote her a note. She wrote him back a note. Okay. So giving gifts, acts of service means you do favors or you do acts of service for each other. He needs her she needs him to take the car for an oil change. He needs her to pick up the cleaners, acts of service. It's always the little things that make a marriage. She makes him a delicious, healthy lunch with a little love note in his attaché bag. He cooks dinner one night because she's tired from her work. So, acts of service. And the last one is physical touch, hugging, kissing, intimacy, physical touch. So, these are the 5 love languages. And Gary Chapman wrote a bestseller book, and everyone talks about how to find your love language. Some people have 2 love languages, some people have 3, some people have 1, some people have all. They're very needy. So, also with God and the Jewish people, we have the 5 love languages. I'm going to share them. And if, by the way, pipe in if you have something to say, don't be shy. So, words of affirmation. The first thing when you wake up in the morning is you say the prayer Moda Ani. You put your hands like this. Before you wash your hands, you say, thank you, God, for giving me back my soul. Right away in the morning when you wake up, you establish a relationship with your spouse, with God and your soul. And I cannot begin to tell you how many people told me they started to say Moda Ani, just Moda Ani. They didn't do another thing, and their whole day was transformed. Because when you wake up in the morning, you right away acknowledge your spouse, your soul, your godly soul, which is in this context, your God, your spouse, and you build a relationship with that soul of yours. And I've said this so many times, Diane, so excuse me if I'm repetitive. Your whole life, your whole day takes on a different trajectory. Why? Because now everything you're doing is for a higher purpose. It's for your relationship, meaningful relationship, and mission and purpose in life. Even if you're doing laundry, even if you're making money on Wall Street, even if you're doing the menial tasks that life throws us, that we have to do, your whole life is now elevated because now it's part of your broader purpose and mission. So words of affirmation, moda'ani, and making blessings. We make blessings on food. We make blessings when we wash our hands. When you take a piece of chocolate and you make a blessing and then you eat it, it's words of affirmation. Say, God, thank you for giving me my food. It's a very simple act, but it elevates you in ways you never realize. It's so different than when you just eat and not make a bracha. So making a bracha is a very powerful thing. My grandmother would give me cookies when I was a little girl. And I'd say, Mama, but my grandmother would say, I didn't hear that. Make it out loud because I should be able to say Amen. So be it. So it's a very powerful thing. I'll share with you a funny story. When I moved to Connecticut over 40 years ago, the Rebbe sent us here to the Fairfield County to be his emissaries. People would say to me, how are you, Rebbitzin? I'd say, Baruch Hashem. What does Baruch Hashem mean? I'm like, thank God. And there was the president of our congregation who always make fun of me. Rebbitzin, how are you? Baruch Hashem. Fine. This went on for a very long time. One day I see him, I'm like, Irving, his real name was Irving. Irving, how are you? He says to me, Baruch Hashem. I'm so to myself, finally it rubbed off on him. The first 10 years he made fun of me. Now he's also saying it. So we prevailed. So when you say thank God and you say Moda and a blessing, words of affirmation. Words of affirmation. And by the way, I've discussed this many times. I'm not going to go into it, but does God really need our words of affirmation? But that's a relationship. A relationship is two-sided. Yes. God gets joy when he hears you wake up in the morning and say, thank you, God, for giving me back my soul. How do you know? Because God tells us. If God didn't want it and need it, then God wouldn't tell us to do it. He'd say, no, don't make blessings. I don't need to be thanked. You know how sometimes you do something for someone, they go, thank you, thank you. You go, no, don't thank me. God wants to be thanked. Okay, now spending time. How do you spend time with God? Anybody have an idea? Prayer. When you pray to God, you're alone with God in a way. It's me, myself, and God. Prayer is the intimate moments with God when you could ask God for whatever you need and want. That's spending quality time with God is our daily prayer. People don't realize how important it is to take time out. I remember once I told my husband, who's a rabbi, you know that, I'm depressed. He says to me, and I thought I'm going to get some great therapy. He says, you don't say enough Psalms. You don't pray enough. I'm like, okay, great advice, but it's true. Whenever I feel down and out, I kind of started to say like a psalm and like communicate with God a little bit, and it really works because it goes back to when we were discussing a few months ago, the book of trust and faith, that if you put yourself in God's hands, God takes care of things. Where the other way around is, that's always my joke with type A personalities, God says, oh, you're so good at it, do it yourself. You don't need me. But if you put yourself in God's hands and you give a little prayer, God says, I'm going to look out for you. You reached out, I'm going to look out for you. And then the next one is the gift of giving, which is such a simple one. How do we give in relation to God? Tzedakah. I'm not going to say charity because tzedakah is not charity. Tzedakah is taking 10% of your earnings and giving it to those places that are needed, whether it's the poor, a yeshiva, Israel, Sharei Tzedek, a hospital, circle of friends, your shul. Notice, Diane, I threw in circle of friends. Why? Because when you give, you get. When you give, you get. So God tells you, who gave you the money? Who gave you the sustenance? You think you made it on your own? God gives it to you. So God says to share it. That's the gift of giving, as we say. I always tell this famous story. There was a very big advisor to the Queen of England, Moses Montefiore. He was a millionaire, one of the wealthiest Jews, if not Englishmen. And there were those non-Jewish advisors and, I don't know who they called her, other members of her cabinet, so to speak, who resented the fact that her chief advisor was a Jew. And they always try to undermine him and say negative comments. Anyway, he was interviewed by one of the largest newspapers in England, and they asked him, Sir Montefiore, how much are you worth? He said, this year. And they said, yeah, this year. He said, I'm worth 500 or 5 million pounds. Okay. So the other people of the cabinet came to the queen. They go, wow, look at this. Your advisor is such a liar. Everyone knows he's worth close to £1 billion. Yet when he was interviewed, he said I was worth 5 million pounds. So it really upset the queen. And she began to doubt the relationship. So she calls him in. She said, Sir Moses, I just want to ask you, I read an article about you. You said you're only worth 5 million pounds. Surely that's a gross under exaggeration. He said, Your Majesty, so far this year I gave 5 million pounds for tzedakah. So I'm only worth what I gave. Everything else could be taken away from me in a snap. But what I gave, that remains with me. That could never be taken away from me. So the queen says to herself, I now know why he's my chief advisor. What a wise man he is. Okay, and the next love language is acts of service. How do we do acts of service for God? It's called avoda. Avoda. So it's basically challenging your toxic instincts. Curb your temper, curb your anger, curb your selfishness, curb your promiscuity, addictions, arrogance. When you say, I'm not in the mood of being kind, I'm not in the mood of being nice, I'm not in the mood to be nice or kind or whatever. So when you curb your instinct to go against the very nature of a person sometimes to do the right thing, that's acts of service to God. You want to do, you feel like being angry, resentful, and jealous, and you say to yourself, you know what? I can't do that. I can't be jealous. I can't be angry. I can't be resentful. That's acts of service. And the last one is sense of touch. How do you hug God? How do you embrace God? Through mitzvahs. Mitzvah means connection. When you take physical touch, is very important in human life. Even though we communicate so well with technology, it's so important for people to give a hug, to give a kiss, to embrace, to show love in a physical way. That's why we have intimacy. If we were also spiritual, we would have no physical intimacy. Yet it's the greatest mitzvah in the Torah for a husband and wife married, and the woman follows the laws of family purity, going to the mikveh, and then they have intimacy, it's considered the holiest mitzvah in the Torah. Now, the other religions call it a necessary evil. We're intimate because God gave us this desire, unholy desire. In Torah, intimacy between husband and wife is a holy mitzvah. It's a holy act. And that's why when a husband and wife are intimate, they can conceive a child, because it's such a holy act. That's the one time in life that we can create like God creates, bring life like God creates life. So physical touch in the Torah is a very holy, special thing. Within the guidelines of Torah, within the guidelines that you're married to the person, and it's a man and a woman, and that you follow the laws of family purity, and you bring God into the equation. There's a Yiddish expression, zwei Köpfe in Kischen, kommt nicht der dritte zwischen. You ever heard it? Two heads on the pillow. You can't have a third person. Two's company, three's a crowd. But when it comes to God being a partner in the marriage and the relationship, that's okay. So two's company is great. Three's a crowd, fine. But except when it comes to bringing godliness into the relationship. So these are the 5 love languages. And when we focus on them, it really strengthens our relationship with ourselves, with our mission and purpose in this world. And it elevates our lives. Because now we're not just doing laundry, shopping, groceries, making money, investing our stock markets, and playing the market, working. Everything we do now is for a higher purpose. And when you're doing things with a meaning and purpose in life, everything takes on meaning. Cooking, cleaning, everything has meaning now. When you're feeling empty, it's not because you're cooking and cleaning, it's because there's nothing else. But when you connect yourself to your godly soul and to why you're here, that creates happiness, inner peace and happiness for the person. And this is what the Torah gave us. On Monday and Tuesday, we celebrated the holiday. So now we did the 5 love languages of Judaism. And now I want to go into something in the Torah portion. I always like to choose something that resonates very much with me and connects with me in my life, and I hope it will with you as well. There's a very, very fascinating thing in this week's Torah portion. People don't really pay attention to this. But how many of you have gone to Shul and heard the blessing of the Kohanim? The blessing of the priests. And that's when a certain part of davening, the rabbi calls out or the cantor calls out, will the Levites please wash the hands of the Kohanim, right? So they go into the kitchen, they wash their hands. The Kohanim take off their shoes. My husband's not a Kohen, but I always make fun. I always say, make sure there's no holes in your socks. And they stand up on front of the congregation. They cover themselves with a talus, and they do the Dr. Spock, from Star Trek thing with the fingers. I don't know how to do it. And they bless the Jewish nation. And when you go to the Kotel and they do it, there's over 1,000 Kohanim. And people come just for that. And it is the most magnificent, unbelievable sight to see at the Kotel in Israel, the Kohanim doing the priestly blessing in the very place where the Holy Temple stood, and they were able to do the offerings and other services of God. It's a very powerful thing. Matter of fact, my father-in-law was the rabbi for 50 years of the Sephardic congregation. And the Sephardim, the Ashkenazim, we do Birchat Kohanim on holidays, Jewish holidays. The Sephardim do it every day. So the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, told my father-in-law, "You're a blessed rabbi. Du bist a gebenchter Rav," because every day you get Birchas Kohanim, the blessing of the priests. So it's a very special thing to be blessed by the Kohanim. And I want to share a little bit about it to understand. There's 3 stanzas. 3 stanzas. And there was a group of German Bible critics that claimed that the Torah was not given when it was given. It's a modern day book. It's not godly written. It was maybe not even given by Moses, and they had a whole following of people that negated the concept of the Torah given in the year 2448, the Jewish year. And they said it's not the oldest scroll. It may not even have existed. They were trying to undermine the whole concept of Torah. They were called the German Bible critics. You could read up about them. They were no goodniks. And they were debunked. Let me tell you how. Something very fascinating happened. In 1979, there was an archaeologist, Gabrielle Barclay, and she went to the edge of Jerusalem to a place called Ketef Hinnom, and there were caves there. And she had a 13-year-old boy that was helping her with the dig, and they went into one of the caves, and this 13-year-old boy found the inner chamber. And they found over 1,000 artifacts dating back to the first temple, the first Beis HaMikdash with Jeremiah the prophet. And then they found something fascinating. They almost missed it. They found these little 1-inch long, it looked like capsules. And some were even smaller than 1 inch. And they couldn't know what it is, but it kind of looked like a rolled up parchment. Kind of like a little mezuzah scroll, but not a mezuzah. Now, you can't just unroll it. If you unroll it, you could crack it. It's very old. So it took them 3 years to finally, the archaeologists, they have all these kind of methods to unroll it. And what did they find? That these were little amulets, a kameya. You ever heard of an amulet? An amulet is the great chachamim and sages they would give people, especially by the Sfardim. And we're not talking about magic, hocus pocus, superstitions, witchcraft. They would give an amulet, could be a prayer, could be like a mezuzah scroll, the hand to ward off evil eyes, kameas. But no way was it taking away from our belief in God, that this was just the customs and traditions part of the Jewish people. So what was on these little amulets? Who can guess? The blessing of the Kohanim. So they had a whole group of these little mini amulets, and when they unrolled them, it was the Birchas Kohanim. First of all, because they traced it back to the first temple, they debunked the Bible critics, because they were claiming that all the Torah scrolls and everything were much later on in life, much later on. Here they proved that this was by the first temple, the first Beis HaMikdash, which is astronomically interesting, unbelievable. So this was an amazing find. And they saw that this was from the 6th century before the Common Era. I'm writing it down. I wrote it down. And they put it in the Israel Museum for people to see. Okay, so we see that the blessing of the Kohanim is something very, very powerful. Now, after the Holocaust, have you ever heard of the Kloisenberger Rebbe? There was a very famous Rebbe. He was from Kloisenberg. Many of the Rebbes were named after the cities where they came from. For example, Lubavitch, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe's, Lubavitch was a city in Russia. It was called, Lubavitch means brotherly love, the city of brotherly love. So many Chassidims, Rebbes, they're named after the city where they came from. So the Kloisenberger Rebbe, his entire family, 10 or 11 children were killed by the Nazi Germans, Yimach Shemam. And one child survived and died in the DP camps. He wasn't even aware of his child that died in the DP camps. He thought everyone and his wife were disseminated by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam. Anyway, so before they got to their back home, he later settled in Israel, he was in the DP camp, displaced person camp, and it was Erev Yom Kippur. Now, you know that Erev Yom Kippur, it's a custom for parents to bless their children. With which blessing? The blessing of this blessing, and also the blessing of the matriarchs and patriarchs. You should grow up to be like the patriarchs and matriarchs. So it's Erev Yom Kippur. He's sitting in his shack, and there's a knock on the door. And there's a young girl standing there. And she said, Rebbe, can I come in? He said, yes. Was kann ich tun für dir? What can I do for you? She says, Rebbe, my mother and father were murdered by the Nazis. It's Erev Yom Kippur. I have no one to bless me. How can I go into Yom Kippur without the parental blessing? So the Kloisenberger Rebbe stood up. He put on his white kittel, the white robe you wear Yom Kippur, and his talit, and he blessed her with the blessing. Very good. The next, he sits back down the door again. Another girl came, said, Rebbe, who's going to bless me? My parents were killed by the Nazis. And that day, they write down that over 80 boys and girls of all ages came to the Kloisenberger Rebbe and were given the priestly blessing, the blessing of the child for the parents. That's the power of Birchas Kahanim, the blessing of the priests. So when it's in Shul, you have to be a Kohen. But Erev Yom Kippur, every parent gives that blessing. Every parent gives the blessing that you should be protected and watched and so on. So it's a very, very powerful story. I'm going to share one more story, and then we're going to go into the actual blessings, what they are, what they mean to us today, why they're so potent, and what is how do we apply it to our lives now, every day in our lives? We're not exactly running to shul on every getting blessed every day by the Kohanim. So there's a story told. My uncle, my mother's first cousin, Rabbi Shalom Ber Lipsker, who just passed away. He was a very famous rabbi of the shul in Bal Harbor. He started the Aleph Institute, which helps Jewish prisoners who are in the hardcore prisons, or any prisoner. He brought Judaism and hope to prisoners. He called it the Aleph Institute. So he had a huge shul, and he still does. It's called the Shul in Bal Harbor. He was a very, very active rabbi, an activist. Thousands of stories are coming out about him. His name was Rabbi Shalom Ber Lipsker. You can look him up. My mother's first cousin. That my grandfather and his father were brothers. So anyway, he tells a story that he always had every time he got up to give a speech. There was an old man who left shul. He left shul. And he was almost insulted every time he got up to give a speech. The old man left shul. And he never wanted to say anything to him. You don't ask a congregant, why you leave when I give a speech? So one day he invited the old man to his house, and they schmoozing and eating. He finally said to him, Joe, I'm not insulted, but I notice that every time I get up to give a speech, you leave. He said, oh, Rabbi, it's not your speech that I'm leaving. Right after your speech, I know there's going to be the blessing of the Kohanim. And I cannot hear the blessing of the Kohanim, ever. He says, why? He says, I'll tell you why. I was in Auschwitz, and one of the men in my barracks was such a holy Jew, he said. He gave away his food. He brought us hope. He prayed with us. He did everything for us. And one day they caught him doing something, sharing his rations, and they sentenced him to the death squad, shooting squad. And they rounded us all up. They lined us up, and they put him up on the mount, a little mountain, so everyone could see what happens to you when you're kind and you share your rations. And they said to him, what are your last will and testament? What do you have anything you want to say before we shoot you to death and make an example of you? And he said, yes, I do. He was a Kohen. And at that moment, he lifted up his hands and he said, Birchat Kohanim. He said there wasn't a dry eye in the entire camp that day as they shot him to death. He said, you see, I remember his voice blessing us. And if I hear someone else say Birchas Kohanim, I'm afraid that his voice will be erased from my memory. So I can never, ever hear anyone else say Birchas Kohanim, he says. The door is unlocked, sir. The door is unlocked. Open the door, sir. Sorry, someone's at the door of the shul. I can never, never hear someone else's Birchat Kohanim. So that's the power of the blessing of the Kohen. So in this week's Torah portion, it tells us about this. And it's very, very fascinating. There are 3 stanzas. Each stanza, if you count, has 15 words and 60 letters. And the numerical value of the word Kohen is 75. So if you take the Hebrew letters, every Hebrew letter has a numerical value. It's 75. So if you add up the letters and the words, equals 75. So the name Kohen has the same numerical value of all the numbers of letters and words in the blessings. It's just such a cute tidbit. So what is these blessings about? So first we're going to do it very light, and then we're going to go in a little deeper. So there's 3 blessings in the Torah, and it goes deeper and deeper and more profound. And before the Kohanim bless us, they say a blessing. Levarech es Ama Yisrael ba'ahava. I shall bless the Jewish people with love. So what does it mean I should bless you with love? First of all, do you ever see any other blessing end off with love? When you make a blessing on the bread, you say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz ba'ahava with love. Moda'ani ba'ahava with love. What's saying here is that if you are a Kohen and you don't feel love for your congregation, for the Jewish people, you're angry, resentful, you had a fight with somebody that day, you cannot bless. You cannot get up and bless the Jewish people. You have to say, you know what? I recuse myself. Like a corrupt judge who's involved. Yeah, I recuse myself. So if a Kohen does not feel love in his heart, he cannot get up to bless the people. Teaches us you can't bless if you don't have love. A blessing without love is meaningless. If in your heart you really hate, resent, despise, do not bless, because your blessing will be tainted in a sense. So that's the first thing. A Kohen must feel love. But if you look at it on a deeper level, what the Torah is telling him, or the Kohen, is you're blessing the Jewish people with the gift of love. That's another way of looking at it. Levarech es Am Yisrael be'ahava. I'm blessing you, my dear brothers and sisters, that you should feel love in your heart. You should feel love in your heart. You know, you meet people many times, I share this often, that people are like angry, but they're not really angry at you. They're just angry people. Like somebody will snap at you and you feel bad. What did I do? It's not what you did, it's how they're feeling. So when you bless someone that you should have love, it's a very big blessing. There's so many times, I'm sure you've met people that insulted you, snapped at you, made a rude comment. Why? Yeah, I'll mention that. Is because they're lacking love. They don't have love in their heart. So that's why they're lashing out at you. It's not, don't take it personally, I always say. It's very hard not to. Okay, so the Nancy asked, where do we have this blessing? It's in the Siddur, it's in the prayers. If you go to your Siddur and look for the Birchat Kohanim, the blessing that the Kohen makes, the opening blessing says, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher Hashem tzivanu levarech es Yisrael bi'ahava. That's where it's found. Can you open the door, Rachel? Someone's at the door. Okay. Wow, it's good.
Is it also in Naso? Because I had opened up to Naso.
No, in Naso you only have, let me tell you where you have it.
I know where, yeah.
Look
on page 804. Yes, I see it there.
You see it? Okay. Naso, chapter 4 of Beis Chav Zayin.
Thank you.
Okay. So you see it, Nancy?
I'm looking and I see at
okay, look at chapter 4, passage 23. Chapter 4, chapter 23. Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, this is how you shall bless the children of Israel. Saying,
I have it.
You got it? Okay. Good if you have it. It's very good.
I have it, yes.
Okay. So now you see passage Chav Daled, Yivarechacha Hashem v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and watch over you. That's the first stanza. What does this mean? Very simple. May God bless you and watch over you. This is material blessings, the Torah tells us. Material blessings, money, sustenance, health, anything material and physical, we ask God. Okay? Now I'm going to do the light version and then we're going to go deeper. The next stanza is Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'kuneka. May God shine his face on you and give you grace. What is this? What is this? These are the moral blessings. Relationships with other people, because grace is unconditional love. That you should have the moral, ethical blessings in your relationships and with other people and so on. And the last one, Yisah Hashem panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. May God lift his face toward you and grant you peace. And this is a beautiful thing. This is that we should have a personal relationship with God, like a father to a child or a husband to a wife. That God should lift his face towards you. What does this mean? There's a story told that in the distance there was a big ship coming towards the dock. And there were so many people on the dock waiting for their family members to come off the ship. And there's a little boy waving, and going like this and waving. And a rude fellow says, "Little boy, who are you waving to? Who do you think is going to see you? You think anybody? The ship is miles away. Who are you waving to? Why are you wasting your time? It's futile. No one could see you on the ship." He says, "Oh, no, dear sir, you don't understand. The captain is my father. He will see me." So when we ask that, yeah, the world is filled with billions of people. And you wonder, does God notice me? Is God going to look at me even? I'm one of a billion. I don't matter. So Birchas Kohanim points out to us something very pivotal, that we ask that God lift his face towards you. Pay attention to me. Tell me that I matter. And that's what I mention all the time, the famous line, that birth is God's way of telling you that you matter. That you're not here by accident, coincidence, a mistake. Like I met a friend, she says to me, she had a little boy, she has 4 sons, her youngest, she says he was a mistake. I'm like, what? How was he? And in front of her child, she said, I'm like, how was he a mistake? We didn't mean to conceive him. I'm like, I was horrified because the child heard this. You are not a mistake. You were meant to be born. God looks at every one of his billion people. Don't think you're just a number, a drop of sand on the beach, a star in the sky. No, you matter. You're not here because, my husband always makes the jokes, we're all here because we're not there. We're not all there. Every person on earth matters. You have a godly soul. God put himself in you. So this business of I don't matter, who cares about me? I'm just a number. I'm just another person overpopulating the world. What about global warming? What's going to be? The world is overpopulated. If God put you on earth, you have a mission and purpose only you can accomplish. So this is the 3 priestly segments that we get blessed: material blessing, moral blessing, and that we should have a personal relationship with God and recognize that personal relationship. And first of all, does anybody want to add anything? I feel like I'm the only one talking. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I don't know. I get it. I
What?
get it. I'm listening.
Right, very good.
It's good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, it will transform the way that I hear and perceive that blessing going forward. So I very much appreciate it and I'm grateful for it.
All right, thank you. So when we hear the priestly blessings, also it describes actually a 3-step program of love, relationships, parenting, because it describes how we should view those we're in a relationship with, our children, our spouses, friends, family, and so on. So it starts off, Yivarechecha Hashem b'yishmerecha. May God bless you and watch over you. There's another word, womb, that means peta rechem. Rechem, bracha, same root word, means the womb. a human being starts off in the womb of its mother. And what is the responsibility of a parent when they become pregnant? To protect the fetus, to nurture the fetus, to watch the fetus. Don't take drugs, don't take medications, don't drink alcohol, be careful, rest. Your first obligation when you have a child in your body is to protect and to watch over it. And to you and me, it seems like a simple task, but you know how many people can't handle a pregnancy? They're abusers of different, you know, drugs or alcohol, and they hurt their fetus. So it's a very big thing. But that's how life begins, Peta Recha. So the first blessing refers to the first part of life that we have to develop. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't want to interrupt that
No,
thought,
no, no.
but I wanted to just, I know you've peppered things with some funny stories or sayings, and Diane, of course, knew my father very well, um, um, Moshe, and Morris Ludmer, and he used to always say to me, "May God bless you and keep you, because I can't afford you." So he got that it was that part of the blessing had to do with material things.
I love it. I love it.
Anyway, I just came to my mind, and I'm always glad to think about something relating to my dad. So thank you for that too.
That's so beautiful. I love that. So we start off by having the responsibility to protect what is in us, our womb. And now the baby is born, right? Mazel tov. And the second stanza is, Yor Hashem panav elev v'chuneka. May God shine his face and watch over you. And you know, so in the beginning, when the baby's in the womb, doesn't mention anybody's face. You notice why? Because the baby in the womb is not facing you. It's not out of the body yet. So there's no face-to-face relationship. The relationship is protecting it in the womb. But now your baby is born. What do? You smile, you kvel. Oh, my baby is so cute. My baby's so smart. My baby started talking before anyone else in the world. And the baby sees your face, you see your baby's face, and basically you are now giving your child the foundation of confidence, self-esteem. That's what you have to do. You have to build the confidence. You know what they say with children, make me, don't break me. Parents at this point, what's your responsibility is to build up your child. Not that you can never criticize them or say you did something wrong, but not to break your child. Give them confidence, self-esteem, safety in your home. Know that they're safe with you as parents and they're safe from predators in the outside world. So that's the second thing in the blessing of the covenant. It outlines our responsibility as parents, or think about it, even your spouse. There's always a wife or a husband, they have nothing nice to say. It's always the critic. You didn't do this, you should have done that. I told you to invest here and you didn't invest there. I told you that I wanted this and I didn't want that. I don't understand why you can't ever get it right. I have to do everything myself. You couldn't put in a load of laundry. You couldn't load the dishwasher. You couldn't unload the dishwasher. You couldn't buy me a car that looks a little menschlich. I have to drive this old jalopy. We all have all our kvetches and complaints. But here it's saying, build a person's self-esteem and confidence. That's what grace is. Grace is unconditional love. It's not dependent. You don't love your child because they grew up beautiful. You don't love your child because they're the best in the class, or you're so proud during the basketball game your son got every hoop, your daughter got every hockey goal. No, you're proud of your child. You love your child because they're your child. They don't have to be the best in the world. They have to be your best. So this is telling us unconditional love. That's what grace is. Grace is not dependent on, oh, you did this for me, so now I'm proud of you. You dress so beautiful. You're the most beautiful girl at prom. Now I can have nachas. But when you're a schlump, I can't have nachas. I could only have nachas when you make me look good. Look how I always look gorgeous. Why can't you look gorgeous? sometimes we project our insecurities on our children. So the second thing, the blessing of the priestess of the Kohanim is teaching us how to raise our children. Unconditional love, confidence, self-esteem. Make me, don't break me. That's what it's telling you. There's a beautiful story. You know what? I'll share it at the end. I'll share it. That will be the grand finale. And then the last level of blessing is Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasim lecha shalom. Why does God have to lift his face up and grant you peace? Because many times your kid comes home from school, your husband comes home from work, you are angry, you're resentful, you're not looking at them, you're face down, you're avoiding them. You know how many times parents, husbands, wives hide because they don't want to talk to their spouse, they don't want to talk to their child. I feel anger towards you, resentment. The principal called me today. So you're not looking at them. You're alienated from them. You have ire towards them. And Rashi says on this pasuk, may he conquer his anger. So he's saying, what? What does this have to do? It says, may God lift his face toward you and grant you peace. And Rashi says, the reason it says God lifts his face up, because when a person is angry, they're looking down. They're avoiding you. So you're saying, may he conquer his anger towards you. That's how Rashi denotes this. That's how we get it from, in case you want to look it up, where I got it from. So we say to God, lift your face. Don't look at me from a weird angle, avoiding eye contact. Some people avoid eye contact because they're angry, they're upset, something you did to them, they're resentful, they're simmering. When you're simmering like a pot and boom, there's an explosion. So we say in this blessing, may God lift his face, and you lift your face. When you're feeling anger and resentment, that's when you should make eye contact. Don't let it fester. Look your child in the eye, say, listen, I was so upset. I'm so angry at you. I feel like running away from you, but I'm going to tell you right now, blah, blah, blah. Or if you're angry at your friend, your spouse, face them, share it with them in a delicate, fine manner. May God lift his eyes towards you and grant you peace. Make peace with the situation. Don't allow this to become a simmering, exploding pot. So these three blessings of the Kohanim are not only blessings, yes, because we mentioned so many times that everything in the Torah is multidimensional, multifaceted. You cannot say that Torah is only for the Holy Temple. Torah is only for the women. Torah is only for the men. It's eternal. Even the blessing of the Kohanim, and I'm not a Kohen, and how many times do I hear the blessing of the Kohen? A few times a year. Shavuos, Pesach, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, and only when I'm in shul. My husband's not a Kohen. He's not walking around all day blessing me. But the lesson of the blessing is for all times and for all places. To cultivate a relationship, you have to understand what is it, the steps of cultivation, the steps of building the love and the unconditional love. And this brings me to a story that I read about. I don't know if you ever heard of Derek Redmond. In 1992, he competed in Barcelona. He was a runner. He won every race. He won every medal. So he's running in this race, and suddenly he finds himself falling, and he literally falls flat on his face and a terrible pain. He ripped his hamstring, and he's in agony, and no one thinks he's going to get up and finish the race. Especially he's behind everyone already. Every second counts, every millisecond. So that everybody watches in amazement how he picks himself up. He can barely move. He's in agony, and he starts to try to continue. And then security notices there's a man running full speeds from the bleachers. And I'm like, a Meshuggah terrorist is coming to attack him. Oh my gosh, they don't know who this man is. He's running towards Derek. And as the man reaches Derek, the security reaches Derek all together. And the man takes Derek's arm, puts it around his shoulders, and they look and they see it's his father. His father saw what happened. He went running to help his son. And he helped his son limp with tremendous pain across the finish line. That's what he did. And the newspapers didn't cover the Olympic winner, the gold medal. They covered this, that Derek Redmond finished, his father and him crossed the finish line. This is what the blessing of the priest is. Unconditional love. My son is not a loser. My son is not finishing the race. My son is going to finish this race, and I'm going to help him. This is what the blessing of the Kohanim is. Empowering us to step up in our relationships and our interpersonal relationships with our children, with our spouses, with everyone. This is what the blessing of the Kohanim is for all times. It teaches us how to view all the challenges with us. Who doesn't want to look away at times? Who is not angry and resentful? What are you, a robot? But the blessing of the priest show us how to deal with everything that comes up in our life. And this is what a father, a parent is. You put your child hand across your shoulder and you schlep them across that finish line. That's what you do. That's what you do. So there we see in the Torah portion, there's more to say, of course, but our time has run out. But
Toda Rabah. This was
so how do we end off our class always with taking on that we should light Shabbos candles 18 minutes before sunset, lighting at the right time, giving a little tzedakah. And I want to wish everyone a wonderful, peaceful, beautiful Shabbat. Shalom.